Welcome to another FPL video. Be sure to tune in for the team selection that we have coming up, and you're going to see my updated ranks and also what my plans are. And there are so many transfers that I could do, but there's also the possibility of rolling, which I think could be applicable to a lot of people. But in today's video, we are discussing the transfer tips, the players to buy, hold, sell, and skip. And I'm also going to be talking about some of the main transfers. So players like Leon Bailey, what do we do with them? And also Andy Robertson. A lot of people are going cold on the Scotsman. Should we keep or should we sell ahead of Game Week 3? We'll find out in this video. So without further ado, let's get straight into this one. One of the main transfers that are being discussed right now is Leon Bailey. He was benched in Game Week 2 and Aston Villa ended up winning the game without him. Yes, he did come on towards the tail end of the match, but they already had scored the 2 goals to get that victory against Everton. And Leon Bailey still, in my opinion, is one of the best 5 million midfielders, but one of the main problems with him, and it always has been, is that it's very difficult to get off him now because you are very limited in your choice. Unless you have a lot of money in the bank, like 0.5 million or a bit more, then it's very hard to get that really good replacement. And right now I think it is Rodrigo, but there is a 0.6 million difference between the two, and not many of us will have the funds in the bank in order to achieve that move. However, a lot of you that didn't do the Kane to Haaland switch in Game Week 2, you will have 2 free transfers in most cases, and in that case you can make another downgrade elsewhere, perhaps with someone like Andy Robertson or someone else in your team, and you can make that switch from Bailey to Rodrigo, because I think honestly around that price and below, apart from Martinelli, Rodrigo for me stands out as the best option. Yes, Game Week 3 isn't that great, but the fixtures after that look very, very impressive for Leeds, and Rodrigo is in very fine form, scoring 3 goals in 2 matches, including a brace against Southampton. It is fairly disappointing because Leon Bailey has the quality. He had a very good pre-season, and I think he also had the fixtures, at least for the first 3 game weeks, but it was always a bit of a short-term move. I have him as well in my team, and I'll discuss what I'm going to do in my team selection video. But what I would do with Leon Bailey, if you have the funds, is easily go to Rodrigo, but we have to also be realistic. A lot of you won't have those funds, so what would you do in that instance? Well, I would probably keep Bailey for now if you don't have 2 free transfers, and then in the future you can upgrade him maybe to an 8 million midfielder, or you can go to someone like Rodrigo, because I look at Dewsbury Hall, I think he's a decent option, but I also don't think he's that much better than Bailey. And if Leon Bailey can get those starts again eventually, I think he's actually the better option in isolation. You've also got Josh Dasilva, but would I go from Bailey to Josh Dasilva, especially with Dasilva going up in price to 4.6 million, and that also makes it more difficult in the future to make other transfers because you really want that extra 0.5 million from making that move. Now look, don't get me wrong, Dasilva is a decent option around his price. And while we have a few around 4.5 million that look decent at least, you still wouldn't expect to start them most weeks, and that's not really going to be the plan. With those options, you really want them to sit on your bench. So I'd either downgrade Bailey in the future to another 4.5 million midfielder and then really bolster your defense and your attack, or I would just wait another week, have 2 free transfers, and find the funds to upgrade Bailey, because that's the thing you really want to do and get away from that price point. Yes, you will have a few others like Harrison, you will have Aronson, and a few other good options around the midfield, around 5.56 million, but I just don't think any of them stand out at the moment, and Rodrigo is the only one I'd seriously consider apart from Martinelli. I think there's a genuine compensation to sell someone like Erling Haaland, Harry Kane, or even Mohamed Salah to get someone like Kevin De Bruyne in your team. A mega differential, and he has looked very impressive in the first 2 games of the season. He got an assist against West Ham for Erling Haaland, and I think that combination will be fantastic throughout the season. But he also came into a league of his own against Bournemouth at home. He's got good stats, as you can see on screen, especially in terms of creativity, and he's been fairly clinical in the last season or so, because in the past, I think sometimes he had a lot of big chances and he would just not be able to take them away, but he has kind of changed that, and with limited chances and especially in terms of quality, he has still been able to score a good amount of goals, and that's something he's really added to his game. He's always scored 10 plus goals, but he's kind of got the ability now to get 15 plus, and I think he could do that again this season. If he does and he gets those assists, he could be one of the highest scoring players, if not the highest. De Bruyne is that good of a player. He's got great fixtures until Game Week 10 and possibly beyond, and City can do well against absolutely anybody. They look like the best team in the league at the moment, as they have been in the past few years. So Kevin De Bruyne for me is a buy. Ivan Toney was very popular before the game was released and when Eriksen was still a Brentford player. But once his contract was up and he went to Man United, I think that also played a part in a lot of us having doubts about Ivan Toney because his upturn in form also coincided with the arrival of Eriksen. So if he didn't really have that creator and also the change of system that came with it, then is Ivan Toney going to do the business? And will Brentford struggle this season with second season syndrome, which has hit so many of the newly promoted clubs in the last few years? But I have to say, in the first two games, Brentford have eased our fears, and Ivan Toney scored against Leicester and got 2 assists against Man United, and he's looking very impressive. He's got great fixtures now, and now is a great time to get on him. He has gone up in price to 7.1 million, so it's going to be a bit more difficult to get to him, but I think he is still a great option. And apart from Gabriel Jesus, and you probably say a premium forward, I think Ivan Toney is the very next best thing. And one thing we could do and consider for our teams in the future is to go without Haaland or Kane and go for Ivan Toney instead, and that also allows us to go for De Bruyne and Salah in the midfield whilst also having a very balanced squad overall. The final buy of this video is a 5 million defender, and we're now going to talk about Cucurella versus Kyle Walker. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. I have to say, in the short term, I do think Walker is the better pick because he plays for a better defence and I can see more clean sheets and points as a result. But Cucurella definitely has that attacking threat over Kyle Walker, despite only getting, I think, 1 assist last season, but he's already got an assist in this campaign against Spurs, and he has looked very impressive on the eye. He got 0 points in the first game against Everton, but he still looked very impressive when coming on. I have to say, though, we have to consider a few things with these two players. So with Cucurella, he does have to compete with Ben Chilwell, but Thomas Tuchel came out recently and said that Chilwell isn't really ready to start these matches at the moment. So I think in the short term, Cucurella should be nailed, and I think he also has the ability to play as a left centre-back and coinciding and coexisting with Ben Chilwell in the same team. But with Kyle Walker, City have signed a new left-back, Sergio Gomez. Obviously, he's a right-back, but that could also push Joao Cancelo to the right-back slot, and that will reduce Walker's minutes as a result. So I think they're both kind of short-term solutions. I'm not too convinced by them being nailed in the long term, but let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. I have to say, right now, for let's say the next 3 or 5 game weeks, I would prefer Kyle Walker, and I think he's going to get more clean sheets this season, but I think Cucurella will get more assists, more minutes, and I think therefore in the long term, when we're looking all the way until the end of the season or medium to long term, I think Cucurella will be the better pick. So if I had to pick someone right now and you're looking for an early wild card, go for Kyle Walker. However, if you want someone longer term, someone you don't really want to chop and change, Cucurella might be the one, but I could be wrong about that, and it's going to be very difficult to distinguish between the two. If you're asking me to pick one right now, it would be Kyle Walker. If we were to get one of these 5 million defenders, do we sell Andy Robertson to them? Well, I personally think we should hold. Yes, he's been very disappointing in the first 2 game weeks. Only 3 points. You've got Diaz scoring a worldie against Crystal Palace, but Man United up next. I'm not trying to rub it in, but you also got the great fixtures after that in Bournemouth. Newcastle's decent, even though they're definitely much better this season. Everton away and Wolves at home. I would keep Andy Robertson. We made a conscious decision to start the season with a 7 million defender. And my main issue with going for someone like Robertson on top of Trent, Cancelo and Reece James is that you're also going to be a bit more limited in terms of your funds to invest in your midfield, which I think is arguably the most important position. It definitely has been over the years. And I would love an 8 million midfielder, whether it's Maddison or Diaz, who probably look like the 2 best right now, along with Bukayo Saka. But I think we should hold Andy Robertson. If you don't have the Scotsman, then I wouldn't look to buy him in right now, and I would prioritize getting an 8 million midfielder potentially. But if you have him, I think you should hold, and I think he can definitely produce the goods with clean sheets and also some bonus points, assists. I think they're all yet to come. The underlying stats don't really suggest that. 0.07 xg and expected assist, that's nothing spectacular. 1 shot in the box in 2 matches, 1 shot overall, but I think these stats will slowly start to pick up, and I can see Robertson producing a significant haul against Man United. And a lot of people look at the fixture, it's obviously kind of marked as red on the FDR, and they just sell, but I would keep him, and I think the points will come and your patience will be rewarded. Let me know your thoughts on that one. I'm also considering downgrading Robertson, but only to get that 8 million midfielder in my team, and I'll discuss what I'm going to do in my team selection, but I think in most cases we should hold Andy Robertson. I mentioned Bukayo Saka just now in terms of the best 8 million midfielders. I still think he's up there in the top 3, and I'd still put him ahead of Diaz, but he has looked very underwhelming this season, not just in FPL, but also compared to the other attackers. I think he's been a bit, let's say, blunt. He hasn't really offered what he can do, but it's also a good sign for Arsenal. The fact that Saka hasn't been that good, yeah, they're still scoring so many goals and should have scored more against Leicester. 1 assist for that own goal by Mark Guehi in game week 1. He's had 4 shots in the box, which is a decent stat in 2 games. 4 shots overall, 1 on target, and the expected goal involvement is under 1, but it's still not too bad considering it's the start of the season and he hasn't been looking fully at it. He's had 1 big chance created, no big chances himself, but I think Saka will start to produce the goods, starting with Bournemouth potentially. Then he's got Fulham, Aston Villa, Man United, Everton. Those are good games overall for Arsenal, and I think they can build upon their very good start. Arsenal, the only team apart from Man City to win both of the opening games, and they're looking in fine form, scoring 6 goals. A bit suspect defensively, but Bukayo Saka is still one of the best 8 million options and one of the best midfielders overall. I think he'll still be right up there at the end of the season, and I think the goods and the points will start to be produced right now in Game Week 3. The last hold of this video is Kieran Trippier. Now, it's very difficult because there's a caveat to this. In Game Weeks 3 and 5, Newcastle play Man City and Liverpool. Now, I don't expect the Toon to be smashed because I think they're a much better team this season and they could actually give a very good game to both of these teams, especially to Liverpool. However, if you don't have the cover for Kieran Trippier and you have to play someone that you really don't want to play like Andreas Pereira, then I would sell Kieran Trippier. But if you do have the cover, I would easily hold him because I think Newcastle will probably be one of the best defences outside the top 6, and I could see them even competing for the 6th place position, to be honest. They're looking that good this season and they're looking very impressive. Against Brighton, I have to say, they weren't that good and they were lucky to hold on. Nick Pope produced some really big heroics, but I think Kieran Trippier, Sven Botman, Fabian Schär, Nick Pope himself all offer extremely good value, and they're probably my favourite options, even over Bruno Guimaraes and Callum Wilson, who are still good options in their own right, but I prefer their defensive coverage, and I wouldn't double up on them, but 1 defensive coverage from Newcastle I think is the right way to go. Now, Kieran Trippier's attacking threat is a bit overrated in my opinion, and you could save the 0.5 million with Sven Botman, but would I go from Trippier to Sven Botman in Game Week 3 or in Game Week 4? No, I wouldn't. You know, you kind of made your bed. I just keep him for now, and he will probably get more attacking contributions than them for the duration that you have him in your team. But I also don't think Trippier's attacking threat is as good as Reece James and all these other great fullbacks that we have, even Ivan Perisic when he starts for Spurs eventually. So Kieran Trippier is a good option. I think I would hold him, but only if you have the cover necessary in order to do so. How many fullbacks am I going to be talking about today? We talked about Cucurella, we talked about Kyle Walker, all these different options like Kieran Trippier, but Ben Chilwell for me is a sell just because of what Thomas Tuchel said and the fact he didn't start in Game Week 2. I think Chilwell will come on as a sub more often than not for the time being, and like Tuchel said, his energy, his pace will help them a lot in the final stint of a game, but I don't think he trusts him fully enough to start these matches, and also he's coming back off a very long injury, so it just makes sense. In pre-season he didn't start that many games, and that's why I was just convinced not to go with Ben Chilwell, and I preferred Reece James, even though he has also the possibility of playing as a right centre-back whilst Chilwell plays as a left wing-back, and that could obviously lead to a huge disparity in points. Now, Chilwell looked decent in Game Week 1 against Everton. He won the penalty, but the XG and the expected assists are exactly 0, and a lot of these stats really are 0, but he got that assist by winning the penalty for Jorginho, and I think Chilwell will be a great option in the future once he is nailed and gets those starts and minutes, but right now it's definitely a sell and you could easily go to Reece James. I had a feeling that Riyad Mahrez will start against Bournemouth, and that's one of the very few times that I'm going to be right when it comes to Pep Guardiola and the kind of team he's going to put out in the Premier League. However, Riyad Mahrez was very underwhelming in that game. He didn't get any returns, which is surprising. You know, last season, whenever he started, he pretty much got points. But I would sell him. There is the possibility of him starting again because I think Phil Foden isn't exactly in Pep Guardiola's good books. And the reason why I mention Phil Foden is because he started on the right wing against West Ham in Game Week 1. So I think that is going to be the main competitor for Riyad Mahrez at the moment. And that means he could start yet again against Newcastle away. And that isn't the worst fixture in the world. However, you've got Luis Diaz, you've got Bukayo Saka. And for me, the best 8 million midfielder at the moment, James Maddison. I think they will all offer just a guarantee of starts. They will get more goals and assists and more bonus points as a result, and I would go to any single one of them. You've also got Kulusevski around the same price, who I'd also put in contention, and Phil Foden once, Pep Guardiola maybe puts him out from the naughty centre, because how he didn't square that ball to Haaland still remains to be seen. But sometimes the players just don't see them, and they're so focused on getting the goal themselves. But with Riyad Mahrez, I would sell him. The numbers aren't anything spectacular, and I would still be very concerned about his minutes in the long term. So for me, it's a very easy sell, and you can go to one of those options I just said, or Ilkay Gundogan at 7.5 million. I think he's going to be an even better option if Bernardo Silva leaves. The last sell of this video is Jarrod Bowen, and I actually thought he'd still do very well this season. Despite being 8.5 million, I thought that was a fair price considering what he did in the last campaign. Some people are now going to start talking, as he keeps on blanking, if he does, that he might be a one-season wonder. That is definitely going to be possible. What he did in the last campaign was exceptional, but as we talked about, especially with the assists, it was definitely unsustainable. He got 17 assists from an expected assist figure of something like 7 or 8. That's obviously not going to be sustainable in the long term. However, I still think Bowen's a good player, but looking at pre-season, he didn't impress. He didn't get any goals or assists, and he hasn't looked that good in the first 2 game weeks. If anything, it has been his fellow winger Said Benrahma, who has looked very impressive for West Ham. And whilst the Hammers have been a bit unlucky not to score more goals, I still think Jarrod Bowen is worth selling. And once again, you can go to any of those options I discussed: Diaz, Maddison or Saka. If you're asking me right now, I would go for Maddison personally. He was someone I was really considering starting in Game Week 1. And you've also got Ilkay Gundogan at 7.5 million. If you don't have Martinelli, then you could do something like Jarrod Bowen to Martinelli, and with that extra 2.4 million or whatever you get from that, you can also upgrade another position in your squad. So let me know what you think of all of that, but I would personally sell Jarrod Bowen. I just mentioned Benrahma now, and he has looked impressive in the first 2 games. He was very unlucky not to score in Game Week 2, hitting the post, and also he scored a goal, but it was deemed offside. Now, I think he's a good option maybe to start the season around this price, but you still have Martinelli, you've got Rodrigo, and I'm still not too convinced about West Ham at the moment, and the fixtures are very mixed. You've got Brighton at home, which for me is a relatively tough fixture right now. Aston Villa away I think is decent, but Tottenham at home and then Chelsea away, I just wouldn't look to buy Benrahma in right now. I know he's a bit of a popular option and he's looked good, and the eye test is definitely a very important factor when it comes to FPL transfers, but I would skip Benrahma, maybe keep him in the watch list, and once West Ham's fixtures turn for the better, that's when you can go for someone like Benrahma, and he could offer much better value than even Jarrod Bowen this season. But right now, it's a skip for me. A bit of a recurring theme here with a skip. Ollie Watkins looked very good in Game Week 2. He got 2 assists against Everton, but I would still skip him because I'm seeing a lot of people getting him in, but then he's got Crystal Palace away, then West Ham at home, which to be fair might not be the worst fixture right now, but then that's followed by Arsenal away, Man City at home, and Leicester away. I just don't think it's worth it, and Ollie Watkins is very inconsistent. He's a very frustrating FPL player, so despite how good he looked in Game Week 2, I would still skip him entirely. He didn't even start in Game Week 1. There's a few rumours of him and Gerrard falling out. I'm not sure how much truth there is to them, but I think there are better options around his price. You can go to Ivan Toney, who is even cheaper than Ollie Watkins. You've got Callum Wilson. After Game Week 3 and Game Week 5, he looks fantastic with those fixtures, and Newcastle look like a better team than Aston Villa. You've also got Gabriel Jesus, Darwin Nunez when he is back from suspension, and I think there are just better strikers around the same price who will just get more goals, more assists, more bonus points, and just be a better option overall. So I would skip Ollie Watkins right now. Let me know if you disagree with any of these, because I might be wrong about these in the end, and that's what it's all about, offering our opinions and also showing the data and looking at the eye test. The final player discussed today is Josh Dasilva. He is so popular. Everyone is getting rid of Bailey and going to Josh Dasilva, and you can still do it. There's a 0.4 million difference between the two, and Dasilva will probably go up in price yet again to 4.7 million. But are you going to realistically start him or be happy to start him in most game weeks? The answer for me personally is no, and you could also just go to another 4.5 million midfielder, because with that 0.5 million you kind of gain from doing Bailey to a 4.5 million midfielder, you can do so much more, and you might be priced out of certain moves if you go to Josh Dasilva and you only get 0.3 or 0.4 million, depending on what his price is when this video is released. But 2 goals in 2 games is very impressive, but then you also have to think about the nature of the goals. Against Leicester, it was a very well taken goal, and there was not much the keeper could do about it. He found some space despite so many Leicester players surrounding him, but then in Game Week 2, that was an absolute howler by De Gea, and it's 2 shots, 2 goals. That's very unsustainable, and the XG of both of those shots is 0.28. So you're not really going to expect them to continue this in the long term. I think Josh Dasilva will have a good season and maybe even be the best 4.5 million midfielder. I discussed this in pre-season. For me, it's between him and Andreas Pereira, and I could see Dasilva doing well, but is it worth doing an early transfer and then maybe that will incur the possibility of hits in the future? You know, heading into the Game Week 3 deadline, I don't think it's worth it. And would I want to start Dasilva in most Game Weeks? Not right now, to be honest. I'd rather go for other Brentford assets like Ivan Toney, maybe one of the defenders like Rico Henry, and I just don't think it's really worth rushing in to get Dasilva. I think it's kind of a wait and see. You can maybe get him in on your wild card, but just think about the ramifications potentially of going for someone like Dasilva and then not having that 0.5 million potentially if you go from Bailey to Dasilva. I would much rather wait, have 2 free transfers, and then upgrade someone like Bailey up to Rodrigo or maybe an 8 million midfielder than going for Dasilva and leaving yourself short in other areas. But that's just the way I see it, and a lot of people will disagree with me on that one, but that's what it's all about. So thank you very much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, let's get this video to 200 likes, and you can subscribe to the channel. We're very close to 12,000 subscribers, just a bit over 100 away, so keep on smashing the subscribe button. It really helps out the channel. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram, DylanRCM, and also become a Patreon or a channel member. The links are in the description below, and you can also join the Discord server and the FPL League. All of that good stuff is there, so thank you very much. Take care, enjoy the rest of the football. Good luck for Game Week 3, and UCL Fantasy content is coming up very soon. The game is live. There will be a first draft video very, very soon, and I'll see you next time.